Welcome back to another chapter of Oh God, Not Malfoy. Chapter 4. The morning light filtered through the high windows of the Slytherin dormitory, casting elongated shadows across the cold stone floor. Harry woke to the muted sounds of the other boys getting ready, their conversations a dull hum in the background. He dressed quickly, pulling on Draco's neatly pressed robes, and steeled himself for another day of pretending. At breakfast in the Great Hall, the atmosphere was thick with whispers and uneasy glances. The attack on Mrs. Norris had set the entire school on edge. Harry picked at his food, his thoughts elsewhere, when Crabbe leaned over the table. "Any idea who did it?" Crabbe mumbled, his mouth half full. Goyle nodded in agreement, his eyes expectant. Harry shrugged, keeping his expression carefully neutral. "No clue," he replied. "Could be anyone." Pansy Parkinson scoffed from across the table. "Some say it was Potter," she said, her eyes flicking over to the Gryffindor table. "Always around when trouble starts, isn't he?" Harry felt a jolt, but masked it with a smirk. "Potter couldn't pull off something like that if he tried," he drawled, echoing Draco's typical disdain. Inside, however, his mind raced. How did Draco manage to open the Chamber of Secrets? Even I didn't know where it was until my second year. This is getting out of hand. As they made their way to Defense Against the Dark Arts, the corridors buzzed with speculation. Snatches of conversation reached Harry's ears, talk of the heir of Slytherin and dark magic. He knew he had to act soon. By the time the class began, Harry's nerves were frayed. He settled into a seat at the back of the classroom, watching as Professor Quirrell shuffled in, his turban slightly askew. "Good morning, class," Quirrell stammered, avoiding eye contact. Today we'll be practicing the basic shield charm." As the lesson progressed, Harry found it hard to focus. His gaze kept drifting to the back of Quirrell's head, where he knew Voldemort was lurking. "I can't believe Voldemort is in the same room as me, and he's the least of my worries," he thought wryly. "Mr. Malfoy," Quirrell called out suddenly, pulling Harry from his thoughts. "Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate the wand movement for the shield charm?" Harry stood up, swallowing hard. "Of course, Professor." He raised his wand and performed the movement flawlessly, a translucent barrier shimmering briefly in front of him. Very good," Quirrell said, a hint of surprise in his eyes. 5 points to Slytherin." Harry sat back down, feeling the weight of Quirrell's gaze linger on him, a moment too long. As the class ended, students began to file out, their voices buzzing with excitement over the day's lesson. Only 2 of them had managed to produce a proper shield charm, Harry and Hermione Granger. Harry gathered his things slowly, his mind elsewhere, preoccupied with the looming threats and his precarious situation. "Impressive work with the shield charm," Blaise Zabini remarked, approaching him with a casual air. "Didn't think anyone besides Granger could pull it off on the first try." Harry looked up, momentarily surprised. "Thanks," he said cautiously, trying to gauge Zabini's intentions. Blaise leaned against a nearby desk, his dark eyes assessing. "Did you hear that Dumbledore's holding a mandatory assembly in the Great Hall later?" Harry's eyebrows lifted slightly. "No, I hadn't heard. What's it about?" Blaise shrugged, a hint of curiosity in his expression. "Word is, it's about the attack on Filch's cat. Some are saying he's got new information." A knot tightened in Harry's stomach. Any idea what that could be? "Not sure," Blaise admitted, "but rumours are flying. Some think he might impose stricter rules, maybe even a curfew." "Great," Harry muttered, the weight of the situation pressing heavier. A curfew would make it harder for him to track Draco's movements or to execute any plans of his own. Blaise studied him for a moment. "You seem unusually interested. Something on your mind?" Harry forced a casual shrug. "Just curious. If Dumbledore's taking it seriously, maybe we should too." "Fair point," Blaise conceded. "It's not every day a cat gets petrified and ominous messages appear on the walls." "Exactly," Harry agreed, his gaze distant. "Well, see you at the assembly." "Yeah, see you," Harry said, watching as Zabini walked away. Alone at last, Harry made his way back to the Slytherin common room. The dim light and cold ambience did little to soothe his restless mind. He sank into an armchair by the fireplace, staring into the flickering flames. I have to go to Dumbledore with this information soon. Things have gotten too far out of hand. But how can I explain any of this without revealing who I really am? Does it even matter if I reveal who I really am to him at this point? An idea began to form in his mind. Being in Draco's body had one advantage: access to resources he wouldn't normally have, specifically the Malfoy house elves. Perhaps if he could get Dobby to help him, he might be able to locate the diary Lucius had hidden. It was a long shot, but it was the only plan he had to slow things down. If he could get his hands on that diary, the only thing left to worry about was the basilisk. Piece of cake, right? He thought sarcastically, a wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. No Tom Riddle this time, just a giant murderous snake. The Slytherin common room was still occupied, students lounging by the fire or engrossed in whispered conversations. Harry knew he couldn't risk being overheard or seen summoning Dobby. He needed to wait until everyone was asleep. He made his way up to the dormitory, climbing into Draco's four-poster bed draped with heavy green curtains. Pulling them closed, he lay there, heart pounding, listening to the sounds of his dorm mates settling in for the night. The rustling of sheets, muffled whispers, and occasional snores gradually faded into the steady rhythm of sleep. When he was certain the room was silent, Harry slipped out of bed as quietly as possible. The cold stone floor sent a chill up his spine as he tiptoed toward the common room. The fire had died down to glowing embers, casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The room was empty now. The only sound was the soft crackling of the dying fire. Ensuring he was completely alone, Harry took a deep breath. This is it. He glanced around one last time, then softly called out, "Dobby?" With a soft pop, the house elf appeared before him, his large green eyes widening at the sight of Draco's face. "Master Draco calls Dobby," he squeaked, his voice tinged with nervousness. Harry managed a small, reassuring smile. "Yes, Dobby, I need your help with something very important." Dobby looked both surprised and apprehensive, his bat-like ears twitching. "Anything Master Draco needs," he said cautiously. Leaning forward, Harry lowered his voice. "There's an old diary at Malfoy Manor. It's small black and has the name Tom Marvolo Riddle written on the first page. The cover has faded gold lettering and the pages are worn around the edges. It's very important that I get it. Do you know the one I'm talking about?" At the mention of the diary, Dobby's eyes grew impossibly wide, his entire body beginning to tremble. Master Draco?" he stammered, taking a step back. "Dobby! Dobby is sorry!" Before Harry could react, Dobby grabbed a nearby lamp and began hitting himself over the head. Bad Dobby," he whimpered, each thud echoing softly in the silent common room. "Stop it, Dobby!" Harry whispered urgently, rushing forward to wrestle the lamp from the house elf's grip. "You'll wake everyone!" Dobby ceased his self-punishment, but continued to shake, his large eyes brimming with tears. "Dobby is sorry, sir. Dobby cannot bring the diary because it's already gone." Harry's heart skipped a beat. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "Dobby has already given it away," the house elf confessed, his ears drooping. "Harry Potter summoned Dobby yesterday using one of the kitchen elves and asked for the very same diary. Dobby thought it was to protect him. Mr. Potter said he would be in danger without it. Dobby gave it to Mr. Potter." A cold chill ran down Harry's spine. Draco, in his body, had beaten him to it. You gave it to him?" he murmured, trying to process the revelation. Dobby nodded miserably. "Dobby is sorry, sir. Dobby only wanted to help." For a moment, Harry was speechless, his mind a whirl of panic and disbelief. Draco now possessed the diary, the Horcrux, and who knew what he intended to do with it. Realizing there was nothing more to be done, Harry forced a strained smile. It's all right, Dobby. You did what you thought was best." "Is Master Draco angry with Dobby?" the house elf asked timidly, his eyes brimming with tears. "No," Harry assured him gently. "I'm not angry. You can go home now." Dobby looked up cautiously. "Thank you, sir." With a small bow and a soft pop, he vanished. Left alone in the dimly lit common room, Harry sank back into the armchair, his heart pounding. The flickering flames cast long shadows, mirroring the dark turn his thoughts had taken. Draco had the diary, and with it, access to unimaginable dark magic. He gazed out the window where the moon cast a silver sheen over the rippling surface of the Black Lake. Time was running out, and the stakes had never been higher. "Piece of cake," he muttered sarcastically, knowing full well that dealing with a basilisk and stopping Draco with a Horcrux was anything but. That night, after the unsettling revelation from Dobby, Harry made his way back to the dormitory, his mind a tumult of worry and frustration. Climbing into Draco's four-poster bed draped with heavy emerald curtains, he lay staring into the darkness. Sleep was elusive, but eventually exhaustion overcame him. When morning arrived, pale light filtering through the narrow dungeon windows, Harry awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He needed a new plan. Going directly to Dumbledore was risky without concrete proof. He needed evidence to make the headmaster believe his unbelievable story. At breakfast, the Slytherin table buzzed with subdued conversations. Pansy Parkinson leaned in, her eyes alight with gossip. "Did you notice how strange Professor Quirrell is?" she whispered. "He's always been nervous, but lately he's practically jumping at his own shadow." Blaise Zabini smirked. "Maybe he's hiding something," he mused. "Or perhaps teaching defense against the dark arts is finally getting to him." Harry listened with half an ear, his thoughts elsewhere. If I could track Draco's movements, I'd have the proof I need. Suddenly, an idea sparked. The Marauder's map. Fred and George Weasley had stolen it from Filch's office during their first year, so they should have it now. "I have a plan," he murmured under his breath, a glint of determination in his eyes. Classes crawled by, each one a blur, as Harry plotted his next move. After the final bell, he walked through the courtyard, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. The sun cast long shadows across the stone, the air crisp with the promise of evening. Up ahead, he spotted Fred and George chatting animatedly with Oliver Wood near the Quidditch pitch. Their bags were slung casually over their shoulders, and they seemed completely engrossed in conversation. "Perfect," Harry muttered. Turning to Crabbe and Goyle, he adopted an air of authority. "I need you two to create a distraction for me." They exchanged blank stares. "A distraction?" Goyle echoed. "Yes," Harry snapped impatiently. "See those Gryffindor twins? I want to acquire something from their bags. I need you to keep them busy." Crabbe scratched his head. "What do you want us to do?" "Just grab something of theirs," Harry suggested, "like that scarf Fred is wearing. Then make them chase you." They still looked puzzled, but Goyle shrugged. "If you say so." Without further hesitation, Crabbe lumbered over and snatched the scarlet and gold scarf right off Fred's neck. "Oi!" Fred exclaimed, startled. "What's the big idea?" "Catch us if you can," Crabbe taunted, darting away with surprising speed. Goyle joined in, laughing as they tossed the scarf between them. "Seriously?" George said, eyebrow raised. "All right then, game on." As the twins and Wood took off after them, Harry seized the opportunity. He slipped behind a nearby statue and crept toward the discarded bags lying unattended on the ground. His heart pounded as he rifled through Fred's bag, textbooks, Zonko's products, half-eaten sweets, but no map. Moving quickly, he checked George's bag with the same results. Frustration bubbled up. "Think, Harry." Drawing his wand, he whispered, "Accio Marauder's map." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, from the depths of Fred's bag, a worn piece of parchment soared into his hand. Relief washed over him. Tucking the map securely inside his robes, he glanced up to see Crabbe and Goyle still engaged in their game of keep-away. Fred and George were laughing now, clearly enjoying the unexpected diversion. Catching Crabbe's eye, Harry gave a subtle nod. Understanding the signal, Crabbe stopped abruptly. "Guess we're done here," he mumbled, dropping the scarf. Goyle shrugged, and the two of them sauntered back toward Harry. Fred retrieved his scarf, shaking his head with a grin. "Weird blokes, those Slytherins." "Always good for a laugh," George agreed. "Now, where were we?" As the twins rejoined Oliver Wood, Harry and his accomplices began to slip away unnoticed. Just then, Hermione and Ron appeared, making their way toward Fred and George. Hermione's eyes narrowed as she spotted Harry, still in Draco's body, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. As they passed, she deliberately bumped her shoulder against his, shooting him a withering glare. "Off to bully more Gryffindors, are you, Malfoy?" she snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. Harry stumbled slightly from the unexpected contact, his heart clenching at the hostility in her eyes. "Watch where you're going," he retorted, trying to keep his voice steady. Ron scowled at him, stepping protectively closer to Hermione. "Leave her alone, Malfoy." Harry opened his mouth to respond, but thought better of it. Without another word, he turned away, motioning for Crabbe and Goyle to follow. "Did you get what you wanted?" Goyle asked, his curiosity piqued. "Yes," Harry replied curtly, pushing down the knot of emotion in his throat. "And remember, you didn't see anything?" Crabbe nodded, though confusion clouded his features. "Whatever you say, Draco." Later that evening, the Slytherin common room was filled with a subdued murmur. The emerald-green lamps cast a soft glow over the dark leather sofas and the ornate fireplace, where flames danced and flickered shadows across the stone walls. Harry sat between Crabbe and Goyle, trying to emulate Draco's usual relaxed slouch, though his mind was anything but at ease. Nearby, a group of second-year Slytherins huddled together, their whispers just audible over the crackling fire. "Do you think it's true?" one of them asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Another boy leaned in, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "My father told me there's a secret chamber that was opened before, and there were attacks. He said it was something to do with Salazar Slytherin himself." Harry's ears perked up. The Chamber of Secrets. So the rumours were already spreading. Crabbe nudged him with a meaty elbow. "Hear that, Draco? Think there's really a Chamber of Secrets?" Harry shrugged nonchalantly, attempting to channel Draco's typical arrogance. "Who knows? Could be just stories to scare first years?" Goyle grunted. "Well, there's been at least one attack, so something is going on. Did you see how worried Dumbledore has been?" Wanting to shift the focus, Harry leaned forward. "So what did you two do today after potions?" Crabbe scratched his head. "Had a go at that essay for Snape. It's tough." Goyle sighed. "Yeah, couldn't make sense of half the ingredients we used." Harry saw an opportunity. "You know, we could work on it together. Might make it easier." They exchanged surprised glances. "Yeah, that'd be good," Crabbe said, a small smile tugging at his lips. A brief silence settled before Goyle's eyes lit up with recollection. "Oh, right. So, what did you take from the redhead's bag?" Harry blinked, momentarily thrown off. "What are you talking about?" Crabbe leaned in, his voice dropping. "Earlier today, you said you got something from one of the Weasley twins' bags, remember?" Realization dawned on Harry. Playing along, he cast a cautious glance around the room. "Keep it down," he whispered. Reaching into his robes, he pulled out a worn piece of parchment. Goyle frowned. "It's just old paper." Harry smirked, tapping the parchment with Draco's wand. "Watch this. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." Ink lines began to spread like a spiderweb across the blank surface, forming a detailed map of Hogwarts. Crabbe's jaw dropped. "Blimey, what's that?" "The Marauder's map," Harry explained quietly. "Shows every secret passage and the location of anyone in the castle." Goyle stared in awe. "We can see where everyone is, even Dumbledore." "Everyone," Harry confirmed. "Think about it. We can keep tabs on the Gryffindors, see what they're up to." Crabbe grinned. "This is brilliant, Draco." As they huddled over the map, Harry's eyes scanned the myriad of moving dots labelled with names. His breath caught when he spotted one in particular. Harry Potter, second floor girls' lavatory. His mind raced. What is Draco doing there? Goyle noticed his sudden focus. Find something interesting? Harry folded the map briskly. Maybe. I've got some ideas. Crabbe chuckled. Up to something, are we? Harry gave a half smile. Always. He leaned back, deep in thought. Whatever Draco was planning, it couldn't be good, and Harry needed to find a way to confront him without arousing suspicion from his Slytherin companions. As the evening deepened, the Slytherin common room began to empty as students drifted off to their dormitories. The murmured conversations dwindled, and the crackling fire slowly turned to embers. Harry glanced around. Crabbe and Goyle were engrossed in a game of wizard chess, their attention fully occupied. Maybe they were not as dumb as he thought. This was his chance. Slipping the marauder's map into his robes, he stood up casually. I'm heading to bed, he announced, masking his urgency with a yawn. Crabbe looked up briefly. Night, Draco. Yeah, see you in the morning, Goyle added without taking his eyes off the board. Harry nodded and made his way toward the dimly lit corridor leading to the dormitories. Once out of sight, he veered away from the stairs and headed toward the concealed exit of the common room. Placing his hand on the cool stone wall, he whispered the password, and the hidden door slid open silently. The dungeon corridors were cloaked in darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of wall-mounted torches, sputtering as they burned low. The air was chilly, carrying a dampness that clung to his skin. Harry pulled his robes tighter around himself as he navigated the labyrinthine passages, his footsteps echoing softly against the flagstone floor. This would be so much easier if he had his cloak. Did Draco already have his cloak? He unfolded the marauder's map, tapping it lightly with his wand. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Ink lines sprawled across the parchment, revealing the intricate layout of Hogwarts Castle. Tiny labelled dots moved along the corridors, the students and staff who were still awake at this late hour. His eyes zeroed in on a dot labelled Harry Potter stationery in the second floor girls' lavatory. Draco was still there. Good. As he traced his path on the map, another dot caught his attention. Argus Filch, patrolling a corridor uncomfortably close to his planned route. Without Mrs. Norris, Filch was likely to be even more vigilant, relying solely on his own senses to catch wandering students. Harry's pulse quickened. He needed to adjust his path to avoid the caretaker. Studying the map, he identified an alternate route, a narrow, seldom-used staircase that would bypass Filch's patrol. Folding the map carefully, he tucked it back into his robes and pressed on. Ascending from the dungeons, Harry emerged into the shadowed grandeur of the castle's lower levels. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant ticking of a clock and the faint rustle of tapestries stirred by unseen draughts. Suits of armour lined the corridors, their hollow eyes seeming to watch his every move. As he turned down a long hallway adorned with faded portraits, the subjects within stirred, some opening one eye to peer at him suspiciously. A stern-looking witch with a ruffled collar glared down at him. "Out of bed at this hour?" she whispered sharply. "What would your head of house say?" Harry ignored her, quickening his pace. The portraits began to mutter among themselves, but he knew they couldn't leave their frames to fetch Filch. Still, their disapproval added to the tension that coiled within him. He reached the base of the narrow staircase he'd seen on the map. The steps were steep and worn, each one creaking ominously under his weight, cobwebs draped from the low ceiling, brushing against his hair as he ascended. The air grew colder, and he could hear the faint sound of wind whistling through the ancient stone. At the top of the stairs, he paused to catch his breath. The corridor ahead was darker than the rest, the torches extinguished or missing entirely. He drew his wand. "Lumos," he whispered, and a soft light blossomed at the tip, casting a pale glow that stretched only a few feet ahead. He checked the map again. Filch was now on the move, heading toward the staircases that would lead him away from Harry's path. Relieved, Harry folded the map and pressed on. The second floor was eerily quiet. The moonlight filtered through the tall arched windows, casting silver patterns on the floor. Shadows pooled in the corners, and the air was thick with the scent of old stone and lingering spells. As he approached the girl's lavatory, a low moan echoed from within, moaning Myrtle haunting her usual spot. Harry hesitated outside the door, his hand hovering over the handle. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. This is it, he thought. Time to face Draco and put an end to this. With a firm resolve, he pushed the heavy wooden door open, the hinges groaning softly in the silence. The door creaked softly as Harry stepped into the dimly lit bathroom. The pale glow of moonlight filtered through the grime-covered windows, casting elongated shadows across the cracked sinks and tarnished mirrors. Water dripped intermittently from a broken faucet, the sound echoing off the tiled walls like a ticking clock. At the far end of the room, standing near a chipped porcelain sink, was Draco, occupying Harry's body. He whipped around at the sound of the door, his emerald eyes narrowing with a mixture of surprise and disdain. His wand was already in his hand, poised and ready. "What are you doing here?" Draco spat, his voice carrying the familiar edge of arrogance, though it emanated from Harry's own mouth. Harry's heart clenched at the surreal sight of himself glaring back with such contempt. He raised his hands slowly, palms outward in a placating gesture, though his own wand remained firmly gripped between his fingers. "Calm down," Harry said evenly, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "We need to talk about what's going on. Clearly we used a time-turner by accident, and something happened." Draco's eyes flickered with a brief spark of amusement before hardening again. "Yes, thank you for attacking me that day in the Room of Requirement," he drawled sarcastically. "The Dark Lord gave me a mission, and it wasn't going so well. But now," he gestured to himself with a sweeping motion, "things will be much easier." Harry took a cautious step forward, his reflection in the grimy mirror showing Draco's pale face etched with concern. "You don't understand," he implored. "We need to go back. You have no idea what kind of issues this is going to cause. What if we can't swap back into our bodies?" A sly smile curled on Draco's, no, Harry's lips. "The Dark Lord will reward me just the same," he said coolly. "Perhaps even more so, now that I have direct access to his greatest enemy." Fear mingled with anger in Harry's chest. "What did you do with the diary?" he demanded, his voice sharpening. Draco arched an eyebrow mockingly. "What diary?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," Harry snapped. Realization dawned on Draco's face, feigned or otherwise. "Oh, that thing," he said lightly. "One of my good friends had a birthday, so I thought it would make a great gift. From what I hear, she loves it." Harry's blood ran cold. "Who did you give it to?" Draco shrugged nonchalantly. "Just a sweet little girl who was more than eager to accept a gift from the famous Harry Potter." Rage flared within Harry, his grip tightening on his wand. "You have no idea what you've done," he shouted. Draco's expression hardened. "Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea. Before Harry could respond, Draco's wand snapped upward. "Expelliarmus!" he shouted. Harry reacted instinctively. "Protego!" A shimmering shield erupted between them, deflecting the spell which ricocheted off the tiled wall, shattering a mirror into a spray of glittering shards. The duel ignited with ferocity. Spells crackled through the air, casting eerie flashes of light and shadow across the dilapidated bathroom. "Stupefy!" Harry yelled, but Draco sidestepped, the red beam scorching a blackened mark onto the wall. "Is that the best you can do?" Draco taunted, sending a barrage of hexes that Harry deflected narrowly. The floor became slick as a stray spell burst a pipe, water gushing forth and pooling around their feet. "Rictus Empra!" Draco shouted, a mischievous grin on his face. Harry dodged, the spell striking a stall door which burst open with a loud bang. "Expulso!" Harry countered, aiming carefully. The blast caught Draco off guard, forcing him backward as the floor beneath him shook. He stumbled, but quickly regained his footing, eyes flashing with determination. "You're only making this harder on yourself," Draco snarled. "Just accept it, I've won." "Not yet," Harry retorted. Summoning all his focus, he swished his wand in a tight arc. "Stupefy!" The stunning spell shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Draco attempted to dodge, but his foot slipped on the wet floor. The spell struck him squarely in the chest. His eyes widened in shock before his body went rigid, collapsing onto the flooded tiles with a resonating thud. Breathing heavily, Harry stood amidst the wreckage of the bathroom, the silence broken only by the dripping water and the distant wail of moaning Myrtle, who had wisely stayed hidden during the duel. He rushed over to Draco's fallen form, his own face now peaceful and slack in unconsciousness. Dropping to his knees, Harry searched Draco's pockets frantically. His fingers brushed against empty fabric. No time turner, no diary, nothing at all. Panic threatened to overtake him. Where is it? How are we supposed to fix this without it? He sat back on his heels, running a hand through Draco's sleek blonde hair, an unsettling reminder of the body he now inhabited. The reality of the situation pressed heavily upon him. Without the time turner, they were trapped in each other's bodies, and Draco had already set dark plans into motion. A faint ripple disturbed the surface of a nearby puddle, and Harry looked up to see moaning Myrtle, hovering cautiously above one of the stalls. "That was quite a show," she murmured, her ghostly eyes wide with intrigue. "Boys aren't supposed to be in here, you know." Harry ignored her, his mind racing. He needed a new plan, and fast. Standing up, he steeled himself. If he couldn't find the time turner, he'd have to find another way to set things right, and prevent Draco from causing any more harm. But first he had to get out of here before someone discovered them.